Second Amendment.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, so I think that, frankly, when I read the Second Amendment, it's there is a defensive aspect to it, and so sometimes I do think that that gets discounted and kind of framed around, oh, it's just so people like me can hunt. And I know times have changed, but I do still think that that is a very important component of the Second Amendment, and um, you know, the well-regulated militia and the right to keep and bear arms. In that in that line, it's truly a defensive element against people and against the government. And while that is like a weird kind of thing to say, I do think it's important framing, and it kind of taints the conversation, especially um, for people who I see address it directly towards, well, why would you need an AR-15 for hunting? Or why would you need X amount of guns for hunting? It's just, it's a little more complicated than just, yep, the Second Amendment allows people to hunt.
Cool. All right. Well, you can grill me here for a couple minutes. I mean, I would say that there are a couple things I want to pick up on what you said. But
Sure.
maybe I'll start with mine, and then you can maybe ask me some follow-up questions, and then we'll do a couple of these other questions here. But I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and on one hand, guns could not have been farther from my life, right? My mom is a New Yorker who still thinks she's a New Yorker. She's only lived in Kansas City for 50 years now. She grew up in Queens, and my dad dragged her back to Kansas City, for heteronormativity. Um, but um, but she still thinks of herself as a New Yorker, and as a New Yorker, she just can't imagine why anybody would need a gun. We also live in the city in Kansas City. My dad is a Holocaust survivor from Europe, and so he grew up with just a lot of bad experiences escaping the Nazis who had guns and they didn't, and stuff like that. So he's totally. It's not anti-gun, but the interesting thing is, like, I grew up in Kansas City, right? And Kansas City is not New York and it's not Los Angeles. It's kind of red state America. We grew up like the only Jewish family for miles in Kansas City, and on one hand, you weren't when we were growing up, you weren't pro-gun or anti-gun. Like, that wasn't really a thing where I grew up. It was more like either you had a family that had a history, a tradition of guns, or you didn't have guns. Like, it wasn't this big contested thing.